welcome back to Behind the Forum. This is going to be, I believe, episode 7 in the series. So thank you if you're new or you've been watching all of them. We really appreciate that, obviously. But this one's a fun one. We're going to be talking about the integration suite of GoFormz. So if you didn't know, obviously, GoFormz lets you do more than just capture data. It allows you to connect that data and get more out of reporting, analytics, and really get it to the places you need to go. It's definitely not a closed loop system, and that's something we want to continue to emphasize and show you the ways that you can accelerate your workflows and accelerate your decision making. So with that, we have a great co-presenter here today, or the main presenter really, who I'm going to be kind of having this discussion along. Her name is Sarah Mack, and she is one of our lead. Well, tell us, Sarah, who are you? Don't let me explain who you are. Who are you, and how does this conversation around integrations apply to you?
Yeah, so I'm a senior product manager here at GoFormz, and I'm in charge of integrations and automation. So I'm really focused on the movement of data in and out of GoFormz.
Amazing. And that's what really ties into this conversation why we want to have it because GoFormz, we have the open API, but we have a lot of pre-built connections that you can leverage and expand upon. And so we've picked a couple today. I want to emphasize that the integrations we go through today is not the limit. It's only the beginning. And so what we focus on today are just 4 that Sarah really loves. And we'll continue the series and we'll focus on more and more. So don't feel like just the ones you see there are the only ones you can use. There's way more than this. And I'll show a slide at the end that shows all the integrations. And then you even see them in this graphic here, all the different types of softwares we integrate with. So with that, intros out of the way. Once again, my name is Keith Bateman. I had lead domain generation here. If you have any questions, always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Sarah, like she said, really focuses on this piece, and we're here to get her expertise and how you can get even more out of GoFormz and your data. So we'll cover a couple of things today. Why? What are the challenges team face? Why, when they use GoFormz, they approach GoFormz? Why do they want to utilize these integrations? So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about the integration suite. We'll spotlight a couple of those integrations like we talked about, the benefits, use cases, how you could think about those integrations if you have these systems in place or you're thinking about implementing these systems. And then we'll talk about who and where it impacts. Like, what are the teams that this impacts? Is it finance? Is it operations? Is it safety? Is it all of them? We'll talk about those benefits if you set up these integrations. And then we'll do a recap and key takeaways. Hopefully, we'll get you in and out here in around 30 minutes. That's always my goal, not use up your entire lunch if you're watching this over lunch. So we'll dive right into it. But before we get started with that, no, let's just go right into it. Sorry, I want to keep on that 30-minute window. That is really what I'm focused on. So, so challenges faced, and Sarah, feel free to stop me if you agree or disagree, or if there's other things you're hearing. But these are really the big things that we hear from the team member or the teams that come to us, prospects. These are the things they want to solve with our data integrations, and why connecting your data to outside sources is so important. You cut down on the amount of data silos. You don't want all your data housed in one place. And people with legacy softwares, they encounter closed loop systems where only the data is residing there. It can't be read anywhere else. It can't be shared anywhere else. And that's the power of GoFormz, is that you can get that critical field data, service data, operational data from the field to the cloud, and then connected to the softwares that you already have in place. So that can unlock real-time reporting, real-time decision-making, and make you more proactive and less reactive. It's also the manual entry and errors. Whether you're relying still on paper or Excel sheets, or even just disconnected digital tools, those can lead to those error-prone data transcripts and data reports that can really plague a software system. And so that's why it's so critical to have a front-end system like GoFormz that can reduce those errors when it pushes those into your back-end systems. Already talked about delayed decision-making. When you have a closed-loop system, or you have a legacy system that is on paper or just based in spreadsheets, that data then has to be transferred to the right people who can review it, verify it, and then make decisions on it. Sometimes we've heard, some of our case studies on here when we had strategic sanitation in their previous, kind of operations. He said it used to take weeks sometimes to make decisions and to get this data back and reported on. That's why these data integrations are so important, because it goes from field to office to system and getting analyzed within minutes. And that can really save your team time, money, and a lot of hassle if you connect those systems all together. And then limited ROI in existing tech. Obviously, we know tech can be expensive. Tech, especially if some companies have 5 or 6 systems in place, some only have 2 or 3. But if those systems can't talk to each other, it makes them less efficient. So we want to ensure that GoFormz is able to talk to your systems. That's why we have things like the Open API, but we want you to get the most out of all your systems. So they work together. You're maximizing their efficiency, and you're maximizing, obviously, the money you've put into them. So that's another big thing why these data integrations are so important. All right, this comes the fun part. So who are we spotlighting today? What are the integrations that you should have on your radar if you're looking at digital forms, and especially GoFormz? Autodesk. So Sarah's obviously one of the experts on this. This is a very new integration for us. And obviously, Autodesk Construction Cloud is one of the largest kind of players on the market in this space. So Sarah, I have a couple of questions for you as we go into it. And I know there's a lot of bullets on that slide, so I'm going to take it away so nobody gets a migraine. But with Autodesk Construction Cloud, what do you think in terms of that integration? What is the single biggest time saver that offers, say, like a project manager in the office with that integration?
Yeah, I think I actually have two for this one.
Sure.
So the first one is more of a simple use case for it. You're automatically uploading a document into your correct organizational structure in Autodesk Construction Cloud. So traditionally, project managers would have to manually upload it, rename it, and make sure it's in that correct folder structure. So with our integration, once the form is completed, GoFormz automatically routes it directly into that Autodesk Construction Cloud project and folder. So that's going to save the project manager time, reduce errors, and just make sure that everything is located where it's supposed to be. The other one I want to highlight too is the ability to create a new item based on completed form information. So you might be filling out something like your daily reports or your safety inspections, and then that information could be used to create an issue or an asset, and that just ensures that the info is captured in the field and immediately becomes actionable in Autodesk.
And that's huge because, like you said, if you have disconnected systems today or disconnected operations, then someone has to take a paper form, someone has to take an Excel sheet, see that, then re-enter that into ACC. But with this connection, it seems like you eliminate that middle ground, that middle person who has to do those data entry, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. And kind of in that same logic and thinking, GoFormz does a great job of preserving the original document format. Can you potentially, like for a use case, like how this may simplify compliance when we route that document, say, for example, a safety inspection into ACC? How does that simplify a process like safety compliance?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, GoFormz preserves that original layout and format for each form. So each submitted form into Autodesk remains that true digital version of your approved template. So for compliance, that matters enormously. You're making sure that you're consistent, audit ready doc. So every safety inspection would look identical. You have the same layout, the same fields, same signatures. And then when you add integrations and automations onto it, you're making sure that all that structure is passing along with the consistent naming, consistent placing in the folder structure. So it just really creates a streamlined review process so that any compliance teams or safety managers can very easily and efficiently review and verify the safety inspection forms.
That's super important, especially when we're talking about multi-million-dollar construction projects or field service projects. Having those accurate records preserved and accessible in the cloud in real time, especially too, is monumental. And that can be, if you can't find that inspection sheet, if an accident happens, or you can't find that correct change, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars here. So that's super important. The other thing that has come up a couple of times, and would be a question I would ask, because we're talking about, with the ACC, we're talking about field crews, big projects. Some of these projects are in places of very low connectivity. I don't care if you have Verizon or T-Mobile, maybe Starlink. We'll talk, that's another thing. But if you're on the carrier, you may struggle with data coverage, right? And some of the questions may be asked is, can you walk us through, like, what would happen to the form data when a user completes, say, like a large daily report on the construction site in an offline environment, and how the integration or how GoFormz and ACC would handle that sync later on?
Yeah. So when field crews are offline, like you mentioned, at remote job sites, GoFormz will sync that information once they come back online. So how that would look like with your integrations piece is the user completes the form, and then once their device regains connection, whether it be cellular connection or Wi-Fi, GoFormz will automatically sync the form. So with the submission now online, the workflows will kick off any integrations that you have set up without you having to do any manual actions.
And I think that's huge. And that kind of, and some people say, well, then it's not real time. Well, it is still more real time than it would be if they have to drive that paper form all the way back to the office. Because like you said, as soon as they get back in a connection, whether it be Wi-Fi or data connection, which most of America, you can find a data connection, but there are going to be sites, like you said, whether you're working in the basement or heavy concrete, you're going to lose connection at times. But as soon as you get back in, like you said, that resync is huge, because then all that data gets transferred, and it's no longer no longer waiting to get that form driven all the way back to the office. It kicks off that sync. So I think that's a great example of how GoFormz can be used offline and then push that data when we're back online and recognize that. So I think that's great. One other thing I want to talk about ACC, because I'm really excited about this, and I know it's a new integration for us, so we're kind of promoting it, slowly promoting it and getting people excited about this, especially in the construction construction space. But what are some more examples of use cases that you would give to companies who may be exploring this integration with us?
Yeah, I think one of the top use cases for me is creating an issue based on a safety inspection. So if a field team is submitting a safety inspection that flags a hazard, GoFormz can automatically create a new issue in Autodesk Construction Cloud with all the relevant details that you need to know, and any attachments can be included as well, just to save time, make sure we're improving the accuracy of those, and then accelerating those project responses.
That's really good. And I kind of mentioned before, whether it's safety or quality control, when you're talking a multi-million-dollar project, this is the real-time stuff that matters. Kicking off the right notifications if something's failed, or multiple things that failed on the project site, so then you can send the right people out to correct those things, and you're not waiting a week to get it done.
Yeah.
And this goes in line too with GoFormz native functionality, like our workflows, where you can route things to the right supervisor or the right department head based on a certain input on that form. So with our workflows and stuff like that, these features seem to go hand in hand. Is that kind of correct to say?
Yes, that's correct to say.
Awesome. So no, I think I'm really excited about ACC. I'm excited to see our clients get on board with it and use it. And if you have any questions out there, if you're exploring ACC for your company, or you're an existing user of it, definitely feel free to reach out. We can share some documentation with you, and I'm sure Sarah, as she'd be happy to, answer some of those complex questions. But we have a great team around Sarah that can happily answer some of those questions if you have them. So feel free to reach out at any time about that. But that's not it. The next one we're going to be talking about is SQL. So this is a powerful one, and I think it's one that even I'm a little unfamiliar with. I'm not a super technical person, but I hear this come up all the time of some of our clients doing super cool things with SQL. I call it SQL. Sorry. So some people are going to berate me for that, but this is a really cool integration because I hear about the use cases all the time, but I'm not super technical, so sometimes I don't fully understand it. And Sarah, that's why you're here. So I do have some questions for you on this integration. We know that SQL can use our database to pre-populate GoFormz, your forms that you create in GoFormz, your templates. Can you share some examples of how, of like, say, a specific error or workflow headache that pre-population of a form could immediately prevent for our customers? So how that push from SQL database to a GoFormz template, what kind of headaches can that solve for a user that's not on GoFormz today?
Yeah, I would say the biggest headache that helps resolve is just it eliminates the human error input for it, which can lead to those mismatches and downstream rework that users have to do. So having that automatically pull in information is huge for users. So it avoids things like typos, where maybe you're mistyping the ID that you're using to reference, and it creates a new one in your system instead of referencing the original one that you wanted it to use. Also out of date information or spec mismatches. So One example I like for this one is when a technician opens a repair ticket in a form, they can select the equipment ID. And then
Mm.
with this SQL pre-population, GoFormz pulls all the records around that equipment ID from their SQL Server. So they could pull over things like the model number, the serial number, where the location is, warranty status, and just know that they have the confidence in their data because it's coming directly from SQL.
That is a phenomenal point. And you're talking about the data accuracy and the data being up, pulling the right data. Because you are, like, to your point, pulling from the single source of truth, which is the database. They're not pulling from a catalog book from 2023. They're not making it up on the spot. You are making sure that they're getting the latest data from the database that everybody else uses and references, and that's pulling directly into their form based on that, material ID or a part ID. So they're getting the real-time data from that database. That's a fantastic point and ensures only accurate data is being filled out within those forms based on those pre-populated values. So I love that use case. But beyond just pulling data into your forms and from the database, how does the ability to like write back into like a SQL table in real time impact a company's decision making? For, like, say, company tracking inventory or even equipment maintenance.
Yeah, so being able to write back to SQL instantly, um, your operational source of truth is also updating as work happens. So it's not a delayed by 5 hours or even a day. You're getting it as soon as the form is completed. So that's going to make your live inventory list more accurate. It also allows you to have condition-based maintenance. So if you had inspection thresholds that you were using, once that hits SQL, you'll be able to alert and kick off any jobs needed for that
Mm,
condition-based maintenance. And
mm.
then it's also, you have trustworthy analytics. So your dashboards and reports aren't showing what happened yesterday's truth. They're showing what is current when the form is completed.
I love that because essentially you're creating like a real-time feedback loop.
Yeah.
They're pulling the latest data, using that to fill out the form, and then they're pushing new values, whether it be quantities or the dynamic values of that form along with the database, and pushing that back into the database, which then refreshes it, and it's that dynamic loop of information. So it's always accurate with the latest values, and there's no manual input there. It's just the technicians doing their job and the database doing its job, which is, I think, really, really cool for someone like me to understand that. But for an operational, so someone in operations or finance or whatever it may be inside the office, they're going to love a flow like that because it saves time and ensures accuracy, both in the field and in the office, which I think is really cool. Now, like I said before, I don't fully understand the integration. It's one of the more complex ones for me. But how complex is it for new GoForms users? Like, how does this work also with just say our workflow recipes and that native features that we have in our platform? Is this something that will take months and months to get set up, or how would you describe the complexity of something like this?
Yeah, if you're familiar with your SQL Server, updating your SQL Server is very low barrier to entry. We have a workflow recipe to upsert information into your SQL Server that's available to use, and that all pulls on information based on the SQL connection that you make. Pulling data from SQL Server over into GoForms is a bit more complex, and it does require some training or help with GoForms professional services.
Sure, sure. And that makes sense because every form is different. So you got to make sure things map up correctly. But it's great to know that just upstoring data, updating that database with your GoForms data, that you can utilize one of our pre-built workflow recipes, which are kind of, click and so that's great to know. And that's, like you said, low barrier to entry for at least that starter use case with SQL. That's fantastic. But then I want to talk about, we've talked about kind of hypothetical or use cases and benefits and stuff like that. But we do have a number of clients using this. And are there any use cases from our existing clients that, we've highlighted a couple of them in case studies before, that maybe are your favorite or you think is a great way of using this integration?
Yeah, so one of my favorites would be the SQL and GoForms use case from Pacific Seafood. So
Hmm.
They were using paper forms to collect quality and compliance data when they were out in the field, which could be often very wet and tough environments, and then manually entering it into Excel spreadsheets. So with GoForms, they're now able to connect their forms directly to their SQL database. And now instead of manually entering that data later, it's just going directly into SQL. And that powers their dashboards and reports. So they're making sure that their team has access to that critical data. And it's really such a good reminder that when GoForms integrates with something like SQL, it's not just about the digitizing the forms. It's also about unlocking that live and actionable data that drives the business forward.
That's 100%. And like you said, that this is a great use case. And if anyone wants more information on this, up on the screen, I do have the case study we've done with them. Really great quotes. They've talked about not only the workflows they do with SQL, but also SharePoint. So once again, there's more integrations. We're only highlighting a couple here today, but they highlight some great use cases, just like Sarah was talking about. So if you want more information on that, just go to our resource center. You can't miss it. It's right on the homepage of it. And you can see how a major operator is leveraging that real-time data from SQL in their workflow. So definitely recommend that use case. And thank you for bringing that one up. So next, we're done with SQL. The next one we're going to discuss is I think a really cool one too. Is Egnyte. So this is one where some of you may be familiar, depending on your industry. This is a great way to store data, and obviously, Sarah, I want to talk about with this one because, like I said, it's unique to some industries, specific industries, but it's very powerful in the way that it can help you kind of congregate data. But when we talk about Egnyte and the Egnyte integration automating, we talk about content governance. What does that mean for, say, an auditor within a construction or field service company? What does automating content governance mean?
Yeah, so I think it's really about the automation of the filing structure in Egnyte. So with the GoFormz Egnyte integration, you're ensuring that every document is systematically named and stored and the correct place when it's completed. So that really translates the audit readiness part of that. So that makes it that there's no misplaced files, you're not having to rename them. And then also when you're storing that form over, you're also carrying any metadata around over with it as well. So that can be referenced in Egnyte as well.
So like you said, it makes it auditable because you could find the correct project records from the correct time periods. And because a lot of our clients, they're working, they could have 100 different live sites at a time. And to know that when you submit something from GoFormz, it's being kind of filed in the right folder for that project, it makes it so much easier than saying go into a filing cabinet and then looking through thousands of records and trying to find all the records from that particular time period for that particular site, maybe for that particular team. But something like Egnyte sounds like it can make that kind of auditing process a lot more simple.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And it kind of goes into like that dynamic. You already talked about dynamic folder naming. Are there any, can you give us a quick example of like a rule you may set up for a form that it's always saved in, say, a client specific folder? So like I was an example, like, ABC construction company always wants to make it so that this project, this type of form, this work order form is put into client A's project folder. Is there a quick rule that can be set up to do that with Egnyte and GoFormz?
Yeah, so in your actual GoFormz form, you can use the form fields that you're capturing in order to direct the route that you want it to be in Egnyte and set up that dynamic folder structure. So I really like what you mentioned about having an actual cabinet where you're going through the folders and trying to find that structure. So when I think about how I would name something, I have a similar thought in my head of setting it up like that file structure. So you could organize it by your customer name, what year it occurred in, the location, and then the project number. So you're just drilling down further into those more specifics. And then if you have that information being captured already on your form, you're just referencing it in the workflow for it to upload to that space in Egnyte.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great point, is that you are controlling you as the customer, or as, you as managing your GoFormz account, you are controlling what dynamic fields go into that form labeling. It's not something we preset. That's a great thing you control. And you can say what dynamic fields from your form are updating that document title, and then using that to file into the correct folder. So that's a great thing to mention, like you said, and something I think some people may not know off the bat. Now, aside from Egnyte, because I think there's, it's a great cloud storage solution for a lot of our clients, but it also goes hand in hand with a lot of other of our integrations we have with cloud storage. And we've already talked about with Egnyte, automated document filing, dynamic organization, like job ID, customer name, date, and then just the centralized accessibility of those forms in one repository. So you can, especially like we keep talking about compliance standards, it's great to know where all your data is, how it's filed neatly and organized. But with this, there's other cloud solutions, storage solutions we have out there that may be a little bit less robust, but easier to get started with out of the bat. So if you're a smaller team, or you may just enjoy using OneDrive, Drive, Dropbox, because that's what you've been doing, these solutions are there for you as well, and I think are maybe a little bit quicker to get started with. So Sarah, I have a couple of questions for you on these solutions specifically. These providers we see on the screen, we've talked about, are used by thousands, if not millions, of businesses. Can you can the GoFormz workflow setup simultaneously send the same completed form to a Dropbox folder for a subcontractor, and then say a Google Drive folder for the internal finance team? Can you split the integration so that form goes to one cloud storage solution like Dropbox, and then one goes to Google Drive as well?
Yeah, so GoForms can route the same completed forms to multiple cloud destinations. So, for an example, a workflow could send a copy to their Egnyte folder for long-term storage and audit compliance, and then they could decide in the next step of the workflow that they want it to be sent to Dropbox for that subcontractor's project folder. And then they could send that third one to Google Drive for the internal finance team. So really, it gives you the flexibility to send files where you need to, and it gets them there instantly without having to duplicate those efforts, such as doing it manually or attaching it in emails.
That's great, and that's great. Like you said, the data is meeting people where they are. So your subcontractors may be based on Google Drive; they use it for 50 years. Great, that form can go to them, be deposited there. Your finance team, you guys internally are using OneDrive. Great, all that could be filed there. But also emphasizes that non-users of GoFormz can also easily access that data if you want them to. You will control that. But just, not every user that needs to view data has to have a GoForm beyond GoFormz. We give you the ability to share that data where it needs to go. So it's very accessible to your clients, your customers, your subcontractors, whoever needs to view that data in real time. You can set up those integrations like this so they have instant accessibility to those forms, which I think is very important to reemphasize. It may seem logical, but I think sometimes we think, oh no, only people who use GoFormz can see the forms. No, you control who can see those forms, which is great. Another question on the back of that is, talk about favorite use cases. We talked about with SQL, Pacific Seafood. Do you have any favorite use cases when it comes to GoFormz clients utilizing any of these softwares, whether it be Egnyte or any of these cloud storage connectors?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite use cases is with Master and their Google Workspace integration. So before they were doing a lot of manual entry and back and forth emails, but now with GoFormz, their workflows are automatically pushing that collected data straight into Google Sheets and to the correct Google Drive folders. So when a technician on their side enters a job number on a form, that form and the data is automatically directed to that correct Google Drive folder. And that's such a simple automation, but it's also eliminating for them a ton of manual steps and potential for human error. They also have their form data flowing into Google Sheets where they're doing different calculations that automatically total their hours and prices. And this setup allowed them to actually track their performance. So they could estimate what was estimated versus the actual work that was done. So they could see where their project managers might be over or underestimating and identify those areas to improve accuracy for future jobs.
That's fantastic. And thank you for pointing those things out, because like you said, they've seen, with their use case, reduced billing cycles by 57%, increasing the performance of or decreasing labor percentages by 12%, reducing data reentry and human error, like you said, with those automated workflows. Just by setting up these simple flows with Google Sheets and their Google Workspace, having auto folders and the correct routing, and then leveraging just the front end power of GoFormz to reduce the errors of form fills with that routing is simply powerful. And it really doesn't take, you don't have to be super technical to do that. If you want data go through hoops and connect with 15 different systems, that will take longer. But we're talking about the Google Workspace and Google Sheets that everyone else uses almost daily. So that's the power that a team like ServiceMaster is seeing, and it's the power that you can unlock for your team. And it doesn't have to be this complex API connection that I think some people fall in love with the idea with, but sometimes isn't practical. Things like this are practical, and they can make a big impact, just like you're explaining with ServiceMaster. So with that, those are 4 of the big, well, I guess technically it's more than 4 because Google Drive, Dropbox. So it's a lot. So we went over a good amount of integrations there, but like I said, it is just the tip of the iceberg. But we want to talk about, who does this impact? So who are the teams that this impact? And for me, I think it impacts all phases of a team. And Sarah went into detail with her use cases and her client use cases of, it's not only affecting the field teams, the technicians, so it absolutely does that. The GoFormz accuracy, the database pull, so you have the most accurate data, it affects them because they don't have to fill in as many fields. It's not as much manual typing. It's drop-down lists that pre-populate values. They put in a couple values, it calculates, boom, they can send that off. But that also helps them so that they can access the most current project data, and then you can also route that data in real time. They don't have to think about it. They just click submit and it goes to the right people. There's no more second guessing. But then for project managers and operations leaders, they are also able to access that field data in real time, see the progress of reports, see what's happening on their job sites without having necessarily to drive to every place or call up every field technician, see what is going on, because that data is going directly into the system and they can get real-time reporting. For IT and database administrators, obviously, because they're using GoFormz, it's reducing the amount of retranscription errors from data reentry, which we know happens when people have to copy data over, mistakes happen, but that gets eliminated with GoFormz. So IT managers can reduce the amount of tedious migration tasks or having to worry about, did John copy the work order information into the database correctly? And because I know he's made that mistake, you don't have to worry about that with GoFormz, because you have those required fields, we have the database pulling the correct information, less mistakes that way and less work for the IT people. And then compliance and finance and HR, you really hit on this a lot. All the data can be filed and structured in the right folders every single time. There's not going to be a random work order floating around on Google Drive that nobody can find, or floating around in a filing cabinet for in the middle of some project site where you can't find it when others come. So for compliance, finance, and HR, knowing that each of those files can be folded with the correct project, the correct client name, within the correct date range, it's like all those things, knowing they're organized automatically for us, and when we need them, they're going to be there. That would take so much worry off of my shoulders, because it's all set up. It's all set up and automated, and there's no human intervention needed to make that happen. We know when humans are involved in delivery of things, sometimes even my Amazon packages, it doesn't always land there. So think about your important inspection sheet or work order. If someone has to drive that an hour every single day, mistakes are going to happen. Things are getting lost. So let's just automate that data from site to folder and set those rules so no mistakes are happening. Everyone saves time along the way from field to office. It's all taken care of. Anything to add to that in terms of any things you want to add to those teams that are winning?
I would say for me, like the biggest one that I see the return on investment is the project managers and just process managers, because it's really taking that automation off of, or the automation is really taking their repetitive manual tasks that they were doing today off their shoulders so they can focus on more detail, higher impact work.
That's a really great point. I'm glad that's a really great point. And yeah, project managers, yeah, get on this. I think that's a great highlight. So thank you. And then just to recap, why should you bridge your data, and connect your tech stack with GoFormz? Data silos, break down the data silos, ensure everyone has access to the right data at the right times. And that doesn't mean your entire company has to see the data. It just means route the data to that centralized database that your the right people are using so that they can actually see the data. And it's not just stuck on a paper form. It's not stuck in your truck. It's not stuck on the device. It's in that centralized database that everyone's using, that single source of truth that Sarah was talking about before. Accelerate those workloads. Let's do that two-way exchange. Many of these integrations, like you talked about, it's not just a one-way sync, it's a two-way sync. So the database is actually getting smarter the more they use GoFormz, because data is flowing in, it's updating the records, then they're pulling down the latest information, using it the next day, and it's kind of feeding and intelligently updating that database in real time. So let's create workflows that save us time, but also make our data even cleaner and more accurate day to day. And then get more out of your tech stack investment. If you have a bunch of closed loop systems that can't talk to each other, it's make you actually more inefficient. I've been in companies where we had softwares that did one thing, but they couldn't interact with each other. They couldn't push data to each other. And we actually spent more time exporting data out, importing into another software to then do that task with that data, that we were losing time and we were losing money. And so ensuring that you can get more out of your tech stack by connecting it is super important. And the great thing is that GoFormz connects with so many of the major systems you use today. And with that open API, it's so customizable with things that aren't pre-built. You can customize it in many, many different ways. And then finally, controlling your data. Being able to leverage connectors like Google Drive, OneDrive, Box, you have full control of how that data is housed in your database, how you want it foldered, how you want it named. Do you want the project IDs on each of the fold? Do you want foldered by ID or project site or region or department? You control how it's folded and you set those rules so no one breaks the rules. Once you set the rules, once they submit it, those dynamic fields will name the template and they'll put into the correct folder for you. There's no manual intervention needed in between there. So you set how you want to control your data and how you want that data to be kept in your records. So when audits come around or when end of year reporting, whatever you want to do with it, you'll know where to look for that data. And now it's time for y'all to get started. So if you haven't embraced GoFormz or you've been researching it, now's the great time to really get started because of everything Sarah laid out for us. Because once again, GoFormz is not just a data collection system. It's an entire workflow platform of getting your data to the right places at the right time so you can leverage it to make proactive decisions. So get started today. And this is the slide I was talking about. We go beyond just Autodesk or Google Drive, this and many more things you can connect with. So these logos and many more you can get started with. So if you're using any major tool out there, we can do something with your data there and discuss it with us. Our team, Sarah and the team, professional services team too, is great about discussing the options, what's possible, how can we better streamline your process. So come to us with your questions if you have them, and we're happy to discuss what you're doing today and how we can improve it the future. So sign up at GoFormz.com, start with a trial, digitize your form, start building, testing out some workflows, and we'd love to hear from you. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, Keith Bateman, on LinkedIn. Sarah, would you prefer people to reach out to you, not reach out to you, or who's the best person to reach out to if they have questions about integrations?
Yeah, you can definitely reach out to me.
Awesome.
Happy to help answer any questions.
Perfect. Well, Sarah, I really want to thank you for your time. Your knowledge has been fantastic because, like I said, I'm not necessarily an expert in how our integrations always work, but you've opened my eyes to some of these use cases, and I hope it's opened the eyes of anyone watching this now or in the future. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And once again, this is GoFormz, and we will see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.